what I'm excited about too is I wonder what they're going to do with the tag team titles, because now they're unified, and so we're going to get new titles, I would assume, because they've gotten rid of the double titles everywhere else. And they said that whoever our women's champions will be floating from Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. So I think it was Bernard who
Bernard
said,
did say this.
I don't get
Yes.
why they took the NXT women's tag titles from NXT. It makes no sense. I agree. I kind of hate the idea. But in a way, I kind of love that main roster talent will be going down to NXT to, I feel like it validates the titles a little bit more and it elevates them a little bit more. So maybe we will finally get to a point where NXT will finally get women's tag team titles back at some point, and it won't feel like an afterthought like the women's tag titles have been feeling for basically since they've existed, because they just like didn't know what to do with them and they didn't have legitimate tag teams, and then they broke them up. I feel like this can kind of like legitimize it a little bit, and then we might a few years down the road or whatever get to a point where they bring them back in NXT.
I would say the only thing I'll add to that, to 100% agree, is before the draft, or after the draft actually, we said that the SmackDown women's division is lacking. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would say tag team division in general is lacking depth. You have your mainstays and you have your, solid tag teams, and then you have, just your, average guys like Viking Raiders, Hit Row, all that they just don't get over.
Mm-hmm.
In NXT, the best way to develop young talent is to have them go up against, veterans. So why not have the tag team champions go on to all the shows? Because then they're one, it's a common face with everything,
Mm-hmm.
and it brings more ticket sales in. But then two, it elevates that talent because they're going to be working with these veterans. And then it's like, oh shit, they've had, Sammy and KO had a match against Pretty Deadly. Oh, Pretty Deadly seems like a legit tag team if they're going up for the tag team championship. So, you can do that with a bunch of other teams in NXT, like the Creed brothers is the first one that comes to mind. Have KO and Sammy go up against the Creed brothers. That's a hell of an idea. Or even, I'm gonna say that I'll wait because that's a
Well,
future thought. But yeah,
you're talking about the men's titles, right? You're not.
yeah, because they're gonna do that eventually. I think they're just gonna be the undisputed. It's gonna be one belt, and with both divisions, they're gonna have just floating tag team champions.
Well, and I think
Smart.
that they're at a point in NXT where they are becoming more, I hate to say it again, but legitimized, because there was a period of NXT, especially when Sean first took over, that it was rough. It was rough to watch. And it very much felt like developmental. And that's the thing, like you get it that NXT has transformed from the black and gold era to being a more true developmental part of the company. Whereas, the black and gold era wasn't very developmental. It was basically WWE's indies
They
for
were
the
just
most part.
learning WWE broad, like they were just learning
But
WWE
it but it
wrestling.
was like their version of the indies, because they
Exactly.
were signing like the biggest people.
Oh my
So
god.
now it's back to being like, no, these are our recruits and they're learning and they're trying to develop. And it's like, okay, but it's gotten to a point, I think, where they've kind of like figured out how to do things and what works. And so it is a lot more digestible to watch and not being like, Jesus Christ, like what is happening, and I think that the titles, even if they do it to the men's as well, having them go back and forth is only going to make them better.